Hello and welcome to my first over the board game of 2025, where I was kicking the new year off by representing Lincolnshire away to Staffordshire. And if you tuned in for my last county game, you would have known that I did no preparation whatsoever for my opponent. I came up against the French defence. I didn't have a clue what I was doing after the first handful of moves, and I ended up getting destroyed. So I was not going to make that same mistake again for a second time. I did prepare for my opponent. Luckily enough, I found a database with a good chunk of his games in about 120 odd games, and that helped me to research, what he regularly plays, what sort of things he plays against my openings, what lines he goes down, and I came into this game with a good bit of preparation. And so he starts with e4, I play the Caro-Kann, and he goes down the main line. So this is all main line. And then when he starts to deviate is here, he usually plays knight to h3 with the intention of bringing that knight over to this f4 square. Now, in our game, he actually played knight to e2, but I wasn't worried because I figured, well, he's still doing the same thing. He wants to bring this knight to f4, and then we're still in my prep anyway, which is what happened. E6, knight f4, bishop to d6, and h4. And yeah, this was all. This is all what he normally plays. So this is what I was fully expecting. I planned queen c7 here, just putting two attackers onto this knight, and I was fully expecting knight takes g6, and I'd planned to get to this position, but that didn't happen. He played a surprise move here, which was h5, and yeah, this wasn't. He'd never played this before from what I remember looking at his games in the database, so it was a bit of a surprise. But luckily enough, I had looked at this line with an engine because I remember thinking, okay, what if he doesn't take this and what if he plays h5? Just out of curiosity, that was in my mind. So I did look at it, and it's actually really good for me because I just win a pawn. You take on c2, and this is called a desperado sacrifice. So it basically means when you're going to lose the piece anyway, this bishop's trapped. I'm going to lose it anyway, so you may as well sacrifice it for some material and win a pawn. And it's not actually a sacrifice because where after he takes, I'm going to win the knight back, so I'm just going to be a pawn up. He can. I remember looking at the line and thinking and seeing that the engine said they can sack this knight as well. So you do a desperado sack, they do the same thing because they're attacking your queen, but you can still hold on to your pawn because you take, and after takes, you take this, and then when he takes back, you take that pawn, and it comes with check as well. So you still hang on to the pawn regardless. Um, but yeah, we didn't go down that line. My opponent actually took this bishop on c2, and then of course I took the knight, and so now I'm a pawn up after 10 moves. And he has this isolated d pawn as well, so I have a target. He has a weakness for me to target for the rest of the game. So I was really pleased here. Knight to e4. He's obviously avoiding that exchange where I would win another pawn. And yeah, the move's fairly obvious here. Just take the bishop. Bishop takes c1, rook c1. And this is the move I got to. Sorry, this is the position that I got to in my preparation. So, but it was bittersweet in this moment because I was thinking, okay, this is really great that we're 12 moves deep and I'd basically prepared all the way to this position. But now I'm a bit angry at myself that I didn't actually push a few moves further because if I carried on going a handful more moves, I would be even deeper into preparation and even better. So, but no worries, I'm freestyling from this point, and yeah, I just thought the most logical move here was knight to d7. You know, obviously developing one of these two knights next is pretty much the only considerations, and this knight, it still remains to be seen whether you want to go to f6 or e7. Whereas with this knight, you're not going to want to go to a6 and let him take and damage these pawns. So, you know, knight to d7, it's an obvious move. So play that. It is the best move by far, according to the engine. Bishop to d3, and then I decide this knight wants to go to f6. And the reason I decide that is because I want to make a trade. I want to initiate a trade because, like I said, I'm a pawn up. He has this weakness, and the more pieces I can get off the board, the easier it's going to be for me to target this weakness and convert my advantage. So he rightfully declines the trade and puts his knight onto g5, and then I play queen to a5 check. And the reason I played this is because it's forking the king and the knight, and the only way for him to defend the knight is by playing queen to d2, and then I can then force the queens off the board. But actually, I was also looking at winning this pawn, when his shuffle was over, taking this pawn. And the engine suggests that is best, but first kicking this knight. So it likes kicking the knight with h6. White had some pressure here with his queen, bishop, and knight. He's got 3 attackers on that pawn. I've just got 2 defenders. So it likes kicking the knight and then checking and then grabbing this pawn. The engine liked this line. And yeah, I didn't take that pawn because I explained in my last video, I think it was my most recent one, that taking pawns early on is a bit risky and it's quite scary to do that. But I mean, it's pretty obvious in this position, White's got nothing. There's nothing to be afraid of here. I should have, in hindsight, I should have grabbed the pawn, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. At the time, I just figured that getting the queens off would be the best thing, which is what I did. Um, then I kicked the knight with h6, knight to f3, and then I played rook to d8. I want the rook obviously wants to go on the d file, attacking this, but I figured that I didn't want to castle long because this f7 is a bit of a tender spot. At the minute I've got this e5 square covered, but if I, let's just make a move for white. If I move this knight, which I'm going to want to do at some point, it doesn't want to stay on d7, then this knight can come to e5 and look at this f7 pawn, and I don't want to have to clamp a rook down to the defense of a pawn. So I just decided that I wanted to keep my king on this side of the board, on the king side, which is why I decided not to castle long and just bring the rook manually to d8. White then plays king to e2. I didn't understand the idea of this move at the time, and I still don't really. I mean, maybe he's just freeing this square up for the knight, so the knight can maneuver somewhere. But yeah, I played knight to b6. My idea is I want to bring one of these knights onto the d5 square. I was obsessed all game about getting a knight onto this d5 square, which wasn't actually the right idea. I'll explain the right idea later. But even so, what I should be doing here is developing my last piece. Bringing this knight to b6 and over to d5 isn't bad. It is probably the right idea, but first of all, I should be getting my last piece in the game and just simply short castles. The king stays home to defend these pawns. The rook's now connected and developed, and now I can, go on ventures with these knights. Why I rushed into knight b6, I'm not sure. I think it's because with this king and bishop here, I really wanted to get a knight to this square so I could fork them and trade another piece. So I think I just kind of rushed it for that reason, but I still think I should have just castled short. White plays rook to c3. I think his intention was quite obvious straight away. He wants to bring the rook over to a3 and start prodding and poking and creating some weaknesses. I take advantage of the rook being here for now and play knight f to d5, and white plays rook to a3. And, the reason he's prodding is to try and create some weaknesses in my structure. I can't play a6 because then he just shuffles over to b3, attacking this knight. And if this knight ever moves, this b pawn's backward. And if this knight wasn't defending the other knight, I would have to move the knight and he's going to win the pawn anyway. So, yeah, as soon as you start moving pawns, you create weaknesses. So that's his idea. But I got this check in. I thought, right, brilliant. I'm going to trade this bishop off. This bishop looking quite nice here. Quite happily get it off the board. And I calculated that if white tries to start coming forward to centralise his king, he's going to get checkmated or at least lose a pawn. Because if he steps forward once, that loses a pawn. If he then steps forward again, it's forced mate. Check. The knight's covering his retreat squares. He has to step forward. The rook comes to d5 with check. His only move is to take here, and then that's mate. So, yeah, I'd seen that he can't come forward, and yeah, he doesn't. He comes back and defends this pawn, and of course, I grab that bishop, which then drags this rook back to the middle of the board and leaves this pawn alone. So, in this position, I'm really happy. I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I've made some trades. I've got the queens off the board. Still a pawn up. He still has this weakness. And it's very important that I control this square to not let him push this and trade his weak pawn off. You know, when your opponents have weak pawns, you want to fix them and not exchange them. Um, and this is the first moment in the game where I played a move that I'm probably not so happy with. I know I wasn't so happy with this knight b6, but that was only a minor thing. And this one is minor really because the engine does like it, but I played f6. So it is one of the top engine moves, but I'm not happy with it because it creates this hole on g6, which he can get his knight into, and that knight just becomes really, really strong. My idea of f6 was just to cut any forward jumps out from the knight, basically. I just wanted to restrict his counterplay. But the knight coming to e5 right now isn't really such a big deal. You know, if I castle, the knight comes to e5. You know, so what? Knight rook to d5. You know, double the rooks. I can play f6 later on. Yeah, I don't think I should have played f6, but I did. White played knight to h4, just developing the rook this way, giving some extra support to this pawn, and he can bring the rook out to any of these squares across the fourth rank. I then decided on king to f7 instead of short castles. It just lifts the rook king off the back rank, getting it closer to the centre, ready for an end game when more pieces come off, and just connecting my rooks. Rook to a3, he comes back to continue trying to provoke some weaknesses. And now I've got two realistic options to defend that pawn, which is knight to c8 or rook to a8. They are the best two moves. The engine likes them equally. And I decided on knight to c8. As I explained earlier, you simply can't play this because he shuffles over. The knight has to move. And now it's even worse because that's going to drop a check. So I decided on knight to c8. I figured, you know, I'm happy with my rook on the d file. This knight on b6 isn't that great anyway, so, you know, I can always reroute it later on back into the centre of the board once this rook's moved. And it may look passive, keeping this knight on the back rank just to defend a pawn, but at the same time, he's got a rook staring at the pawn. So, you know, even though my knight's clamped down to the defence, his rook is clamped down attacking it. And so, you know, and the rook is of greater value than the knight, so it's not so passive. You know, and then when he moves the rook, I can then move the knight. He plays rook to f4, which I was expecting. He's threatening knight to e5 check, as I can't take, as I'm in a pin. And this is the second move I played, which I'm really not happy with. I played king to e7 here, just getting out of the pin. But I didn't need to do that. I can develop this rook, get it in the game. I can just go rook to rook h to e8, and then when he checks me, just drop here, and yeah, problem solved. Position's really nice here. All my pieces are now in the game. The knight isn't doing anything here. He now needs to move it because I'm now threatening it because I'm out the pin. And, you know, if he steps into this hole, he's not attacking any of my pieces. So, yeah, it's all good. But I played king to e7, which wasn't as good. He plays knight h4, looking to get his knight into this hole. And currently he's threatening to fork my king and win the exchange. So I continue running with my king to d6. And now it's quite funny, really, quite ironic that at the start of the game I didn't castle long because I wanted my king on this side of the board, and now I've ran my king back to the middle of the board. So I did feel pretty stupid at the time, but, you know, more pieces have come off, so the king being in the centre probably isn't the end of the world. White plays knight to g6, and I bring my last piece into the game and get this rook to e8. White plays rook to b3, continuing to prod and poke at my weaknesses, this b7 pawn. And I thought, okay, I've got two candidate moves to defend this, either rook to d7 or king to c7. I decided on rook to d7 because I thought, you know, this rook's handy just defending the 7th rank, and I can then prepare to play rook here and double the rooks on the d file, or play this rook here if this knight ever moves and double on the e file. So I just thought it was more flexible. But actually, king c7 turns out to be a better move, just keeping this d file open for my rooks, because the rook wants to go to d5, and this is the key move and the move that I missed. So all game I was obsessed with getting my knight to d5. I thought this is where my knight wants to sit on d5. It's on an outpost in the center of the board, looking at all these squares. That knight will be an absolute monster there in the middle of the board. That's what I want to do. My knight wants to sit here, but actually it's not. The key move is, let's just make a move with white. The key move is getting a rook to d5. This was the only way for me to break out in the position and convert my advantage. The rook comes to d5. I'm threatening this pawn. I'm threatening to come this way and start attacking some of his pawns. And yeah, this is how I break out. I can then double, start attacking this pawn. But for some reason, as simple as it looks, I never found rook to d5. Yeah, I played rook to d7 here. Um, White played rook to e4. My knight is now free to move from the defense of the a7 pawn, so I play knight to e7. Of course, I would love to trade this knight off, and of course, he declines it and goes back to f4. So I jump in the middle. He's now threatening this pawn. He's got two attackers, and only my king's defending. So I do a multi-purpose move. I get my knight into the middle of the board, into d5, where I was obsessed with getting it. Like I said, it was in my head all the time that I want my knight on d5, and I never even considered that the rook wants to go to d5. He of course declines to trade again, goes back into sitting the hole there, and now I played king to c7. So starting to make a little bit of progress. But then white then plays f4. Now, a really interesting moment here is that the first move I looked at here was f5. And I didn't look any further than that. I just decided it wasn't a good move. That's because I thought, no, f5 is such an ugly move. It cannot be good because A, I give myself this backward pawn on the e file, and B, it allows his knight to sit into this outpost on e5 where it'll be an absolute monster for the rest of the game. So that's as far as I thought, and I ruled f5 out straight away. Now that's a really systematic way of thinking and an issue, probably with a lot of players my level. I need to think a bit more outside of the box. You can't just go, oh, f5. No, that's bad because of this and this. You have to look at it a bit deeper. And what it does is it's obviously attacking the rook, so the rook has to move, but it also gives my knight access to the f6 square. So once this rook moves out the way, my knight comes to f6, where this rook is now attacking this pawn, this knight is now attacking this pawn, and white's going to struggle to defend all his weaknesses. My knight can now also jump into this square, where it's immensely strong. I mean, there's then this square as well. I mean, so many opportunities just open up squares for this knight from f6. I mean, yeah, and that I think this move would have literally won me the game. f5, f5, knight to f6. He just can't defend all these. But I ruled the move out in 1 second, just simply because I thought, no, this is weak, that's weak, it can't be good. Move on. And yeah, that's obviously a problem with my thinking, and I need to spend the time to evaluate it and not just rule things out straight away just because they're ugly. On paper it looks ugly, but actually it's a brilliant move. I played rook d to d8 because I was worried about him pushing, and this rook was undefended on e8. So I can't take the pawn because when my rook was on d7, he could have captured my rook. So I just retreat my rooks to defend each other, basically. Um, He plays rook to a3, coming back again, of course. I play king to b8. Rook to g3, so he's now putting pressure on this pawn. And again, f5 wins the game on the spot. f5, and then when he retreats, I'm assuming knight to f6. And again, you've got this. So, yeah, I missed it not once, but twice. And I played knight to c7. I'm guessing I was just worried about maybe him doubling up and coming after this pawn, or yeah, I can't quite remember now. Maybe I was still worried about him pushing f5, which should make me look at playing f5 myself even more. But yeah, I retreated knight to c7, and this is where I started to lose a bit of hope. I thought I was confident of breaking out all game, but I think it was about in this moment I started thinking, yeah, I'm not going to break out here. And I mean, this rook to d5 move was the key move as well all game. You know, before this f4 f5 business came along, the key move was rook to d5, getting the rook out and about, bringing the other rook to the d file as well. But I just never saw it in my head. I wanted a knight on d5, and it's like a really systematic way of thinking, and that's what's holding me back. But yeah, he played knight to h4, and I believe it was about in this position I offered my opponent a draw because I only had 10 minutes left, and my opponent had like 30, maybe 40 minutes, and he said no to the draw, and I was like, oh no, he's going to push me on the clock, and this is going to be a typical story of my chess career where I start well, I'll get a good position, I'll go a bit of material up, I'll spend too much time, he'll push me on the clock, I'll make a blunder late, and I'll lose. And that would just typify nearly all my chess games. But to be fair, I had a confidence about me, and I started to play a bit faster. Um, I didn't want to let him know I was worrying. I thought, no, I'm gonna treat it like a rapid game. I'm gonna play quick. I'm gonna seem confident. And we flashed a couple more moves out before we then. He then said, "Do you still want the draw?" I accepted because we got to this position here where, yeah, he can. I think he would have probably have gone. What was he gonna do? Maybe, yeah, I don't know, but yeah. I don't know what how the lines would have gone. I'm not sure what White would have played here, but basically I was ready to sack my pawn back. I think I was going to come to knight to b5 and start threatening this. Um, and I thought, do you know what? At some point I'll maybe let him have this pawn. I'll take this one, and I'll just make a load of trades and try and because at this point I just want to draw the game. I'm getting low on time, and I'm not thinking about winning anymore. I'm actually thinking about getting the game over because I don't want to lose on time or blunder in time pressure. So yeah, we agreed to draw here, and I was at least satisfied that I managed to hold out for a draw and not completely blow it. But again, another one of my games where really I should have been doing better. Um, so yeah, I just need to keep working on my weaknesses, which at the minute just seems to be my thinking, the way I think, and still time management is another big one. But yeah, there's good signs as well. So I've got a club game this week. I've got a tournament coming up at the end of Feb. So loads of chess to crack on with. And yeah, I'm studying harder than ever. So still confident this is going to be a big year. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the next video.